They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful. Friends, welcome back to Rogue Ways. We were actually going to have... let me know if you guys can hear me well, too. We were going to have John Bush here, and I just got an email for him, and he's just not feeling tip-top, so we're just going to reschedule that. So instead, we're going to talk about female privilege. If you know me, you know this is one of my, I don't know what we would call it, I guess, points of contention with much of mainstream society, who says that females are oppressed, always have been, more oppressed than males, and that even despite women's liberation, the feminist movements, and all of this great equalizing that we've seen over many decades, that we are still the most oppressed of the sexes. If we're even allowed to talk about females existing at all, or women existing at all, whatever word you want to use, tonight, what we're talking about when we say women or female are human beings born with vaginas and breasts who can reproduce, carry children to term, and feed them, unless something has gone terribly wrong with their body and their biology. With people who menstruate, blood. I don't know, how graphic do we need to get to talk about what a woman actually is? That's what we're talking about tonight. I'm not talking about trans anything. We're talking about biological females. We're talking about women. And we're talking about history. And we're talking about society and culture. And we're talking about how we got where we are. And there's a lot of people who wouldn't believe that female privilege exists. They've been, in fact, indoctrinated most of the time, been led to believe that we are the victims. We are the deeply oppressed victims of this culture. But, the more I looked into it, the more I thought, I can't find a single example of what is supposedly female oppression that isn't also male oppression. Not a single example that I've ever seen in my life. Not a single example. And even some of the things women will bring up, like, well, we have to carry babies and push them out, and it hurts and it's hard, and then we have to feed them milk and stuff. You don't have to. You don't have to. No one's going to make you. Even in states where abortion is illegal, it's not. You can still get it, or you can go somewhere else and get it, or you could just not, get pregnant in the first place. There's nowhere where you have to do that. And if you choose to, you're choosing to. Men have perhaps equal and opposite, what you might call burdens of their own, right? They also choose many of them. We're free beings. We can do whatever we want. And so it's nice. It's nice to look into and sort of tear this apart because, as many of you know, I once was a raging leftist all the way into very extreme radical communism, working to tear down and dismantle the state and force everyone in this great nation into submission. That was my goal. And so I've came all the way from there to here. And I think it's worth looking at things like these, especially when it's never been questioned, right? And especially, I hope women look at themselves in this, because what I noticed most about myself was that I really cared about women's oppression and, female equality and stuff when I was getting something out of it. But I definitely didn't care about it when I would have had to give something away. And here's a really good example. I loved female equality, when I could I don't know, God, now I'm missing when I could get a guy, let's say, to carry my stuff, up the stairs or something, or move for me. That was a common one, actually. I'd be like, hey guys, you want to like move all my stuff into this moving van and then back out of a moving van at a different location? Oh, you will for free? Wow. I bet men can't get that as easily as I can. But if you said, hey, you need to sign up for military service, it's compulsory and you might get drafted someday to go shoot and kill and die. Nope, I don't want equality there, right? So I'm like, definitely, even when I was a leftist, was willing to use my female privilege in various ways, but definitely was not going to take any extra responsibility for it, right? Or any extra workload or whatever. So it's worth looking at, especially you ladies out there, if you've never questioned it, or if you think for some reason that this is female bashing, to just question whether or not women are actually oppressed, to just question whether or not women actually have privilege. Privilege, yes, privilege, as in more than men in some capacities, treated better than men in some capacities, let off the hook easier than men in some capacities, and so much more. In case you never looked, it's worth looking. It's worth questioning yourself. It's worth also questioning, like, do you take advantage of it? I did. I probably still do in ways that I haven't looked at, right? Like, some habits die hard. Who knows? And I definitely also used it as an outlet, right, for my anger. Definitely used it as an outlet for my anger. I could say, like, men are so like meh. Men who open the door for women are just trying to control them and show them that they're like not able to like meh. Like, really? No. There's not a man in the world that's like, I'm gonna open this door so that bitch doesn't think she's powerful. I don't think there's that. Maybe there's one. The vast majority of men opening doors are like, this is a polite thing to do, and I want to show that I care about this person or just have respect for them. It's fucking crazy. So I used to do that shit too. Just take out my misery on men because it was so easy. What's up, Dakota in the Rockfin chat? What's up, Johnny in the Rockfin chat? Nice to see you guys. There's a bunch of other people I haven't said hi yet. Say hi if you'd like. We've got Tina Bina in the YouTube. We've got Ignoramus Troglodyte in the YouTube. Nice to see you guys. Sound is good. Thank you for letting me know that, Tina Bina. And yes, I am expressing my female privilege here tonight. I do. I have the privilege to talk about these things, whereas most men might not, right? Because women will definitely hate me for talking about this, for sure. They will bash me by calling me a female basher. They will attack me and say that I'm attacking women. They will call me a self-hating woman. And they will do all this without ever having asked me a question, without having actually engaged the ideas I'm putting forth, without understanding, in fact, this is what I get most often. It's people like, oh, you're just ignorant about women's history and how hard we fought to get here and how oppressed we've always been. No, motherfucker, I'm not ignorant about that. There may be things I'm ignorant about, but not about that. Again, I was one of you. I was one of you, and I've come through it. I've healed. I've grown. People wiser than me shared their ideas, opinions, facts, and perspectives enough that I was able to go, what is actually going on here? And I was able to identify, some of my own biases and some of my indoctrination. And then lo and behold, things were much different than I thought. What's up, Dara Ray in the chat? Nice to see you as well. So that's what I invite you. I invite you, especially if you're a woman, to put your assumptions about female oppression aside for a moment. Put your assumptions about me being a self-hating woman aside for a moment. Put your assumptions about that I'm just like hate women or I'm female bashing or something aside for a moment, and just consider some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. And by no means is this an exhaustive look at the subject. It is sort of a last minute show, like we said, but it's definitely something that has been near and dear to my heart for a while. And so, I'm not just like winging it totally either. But there's some really good examples recently that we can get into and share tonight too. So let's jump in and do this. And, if we're lucky and there's time, we may also do a call-in section at the end of the show. So if you're listening now and you'd like to share your ideas on the subject, that you may have that opportunity. And those are always fun shows as well. So I'll try to keep my eye on the chat. It's a little harder the way things are set up. If I had 4 screens, maybe we could pull it off easier. Green Mountain Girl says, feminism has robbed us of so much. Biggest psyop ever. Yeah, there's an understatement. And describing it as a psyop is a really apt move, because it was definitely by design that this all has come to be. We've got Mandy over in the YouTube chat. Hello, beautiful peoples, back at you. So this is part of what has, most recently struck this chord in me. We were talking about this earlier today on Day Zero. If you're not listening to Day Zero or watching Day Zero live with us every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, you are missing out. It's such a fantastic show. Charlie Robinson, XQ420, Corey Hughes, and myself. We get really inappropriate often because we have so much fun. And it is good to have fun. It's good to laugh all this shit away, because it is. We have been psyoped and psyoped and psyoped. We've been manipulated and controlled. We've been abused, and we have to come together, connect, and laugh, especially about these things. So I love that show. It's like my therapy. I hope you guys enjoy it too. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Day Zero. Find it on your podcast app and here on Rockfin and on YouTube. All right, so this is the thing, like I was saying, that has set this off most recently for me, this female privilege. This is U.S. women's team to receive half of the money won by the men's team at the World Cup. This is from Breitbart, of course. Not a lot of places want to report on this, and when they do, they're definitely not reporting on it in this light. They're reporting on it as women finally gain equality after years of oppression in women's sports and being kept at the bottom and robbed of their earnings and like blah, and none of it is even true at all. None of it. And I genuinely, even after I sort of understood that, the women's liberation and feminism was a psyop and that there was all of these problems with it, which we'll get into, I still was like, I don't know, are the women unfairly paid less? Like, I really don't know. I don't know anything about soccer or sports or what women are paid or anything. And over again, everything I could find seemed to show like, no, in fact, they seem to be paid more than what they earn as just like a percentage or a ratio compared to what the men are doing. Way, way off, actually. And so now they're going to be paid even more, which is just crazy. And of course, this picture here at the top, I don't know her name. I don't think it's Brad Smith. I think that's the person who took the picture. But whatever her name is, she's like the famous like lead speaker for all of the female soccer players for the U.S. women's team. I don't know. Maybe they'll say her name. But I think everyone kind of recognizes her if they paid any attention at all. Oh, it's Megan Rapinoe. Megan Rapinoe. She's been very vocal about how, oppressed she is to be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to play a game. Which even on its face should be. And I don't care. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, sports ball, it's all gay. It's all bred in circuses. Everybody's fucking stupid. I don't care. Fucking do whatever makes you happy. Again, this life is very rough. And if watching soccer makes you happy, like, who gives a shit? Watch some fucking soccer. Doesn't matter to me. I do, however, think it's insane how much money you can make playing a game. Like, and I get it. It's dangerous. There's some injuries. You might, especially in football, end up brain dead and whatever. So there's some arguments to be made that some larger amount of money might be fair, because it might prematurely kind of end your ability to do most other things and disable you. Who knows? So that's its whole own topic. But the UN's women's national team will rake in millions thanks to their new profit sharing agreement as the U.S. men's team continues to advance in the World Cup 2022. In fact, thanks to the agreement in last year's collective bargaining plan, U.S. women's team will earn more money from their share of the men's winnings than they earned when they won in the 2019 Women's World Cup. So they'll win more now than if they won their own World Cups. If they won their own games and did as well as the men did, they're going to earn even more than that. The women each earned a $110,000 bonus for winning the 2019 World Cup, and $30 million was awarded to the women's team that year. By contrast, this year, FIFA's doling out $440 million in prize money during the men's World Cup. So Tuesday's 1-0 win over Iran in the men's World Cup will be net both the men and the women $380,000 each. So each person on the men's and women's team, just from that one win in the World Cup that's going on right now, will win $380,000. I think it's still going on. I think we're still having games. And if the US men's team wins the top spot, even more will roll in for the women. 2 teams signed the agreement that will see them all earn equal shares of their respective World Cup purses through 2028. 2028. So that's 6 years. Well, 5, because 2022 is almost over. But this year is included. So yeah, 6 years. 6 years of stealing the men's money is going to happen. This is what they've agreed to. I don't know if you can imagine being a male soccer player, being responsible for bringing in billions of dollars, and then having a member of a team that brings in almost nothing or sometimes operates at a negative and loses money, just getting half your money. That would make me insanely angry. I mean, and I get we're talking about wildly huge sums of money, and we could pretend to say like, "Oh, at that point, like, who cares how much you have? It's all too much money for anyone to have," and blah blah blah. I'm not that person though. I used to be like, "Oh, you're all rich, and so it doesn't matter, and you're all like oppressors, and because you're rich." And no, if it's their money, it doesn't matter how much it is. We don't get to decide what's too much, whatever. It's their money. That's the way the rules are in this society. It's what people have agreed to. It's none of my business. If someone suddenly agreed to pay me millions of dollars and someone came along and just was like, I don't make any money at all and I'm going to sue you because you're oppressing me, and then someone awarded them half the money, like literally for no reason, which is what is going on here, I'd be really upset. Doesn't matter if I still had a lot of money left over and that it was more than enough. Green Mountain Girl says this will put them, meaning the women's team, in a super unfavorable light. It's not going to be good for them. I think you're right. And I think, unfortunately, they're going to use the backlash against it to do what they do with all those movies that no one wants to go to because they're so fucking woke. And instead of just going, oh, people realistically and rationally don't like this, they're going to say, look at all these women haters. Look at all these oppressive people. This shows how backwards you all are. And they're going to berate us. Right? Ian, welcome, Rogue Soul Seeds. Nice to have you in the club. New supporter over on YouTube. Very cool. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say hello to Wellness Path. Hello, Wellness Path. Wellness Path says it's entertainment that pulls in money, and you can compare it to actors. Exactly. So if there was a movie everybody loved and the actors in it got up more money because everybody loved it and went to see it, but there was a movie that everyone hated, no one went to see it, it'd be like the people who acted in that movie suing the people who acted in the really, really good movie and saying it's not fair because we just think it's unfair, and so give us your money. And then the organization saying, like, what, the Screen Actors Guild or something, saying like, yep, you gotta even have your money for 6 years, actually. Whatever movies you star in, even though they're going to do way better because you're better actors or you work with better directors or you work with better screenwriters, you're going to give them half your money. Like, that's exactly what's happening. It's the exact same thing. It's crazy. Ian says, as far as I can tell, the pay scale for men and women is very similar, although women have a tendency to make less simply because they work less in official capacity. Oh, we're talking about the overall pay scale for all of work. That's its own story as well. What's really interesting is that I've looked into that before. Before we get back to the soccer thing, I've looked into that too because I was like, I've heard about this my whole life. I've talked about it as though I knew it was for sure real, like the pay gap and like women and blah. And then I looked into it, and it turns out if you account for years of experience and education levels, women often can get paid more than men. It's actually crazy. It's like very, very similar. If it's like under, it's like a little, it's like not very, it's negligible, right? Percentage wise. And then sometimes it's higher for women and like no one cares. But when you take away years of experience and education level, it does sometimes look like women get paid less. If you just look at women and men in an industry, it can look like that. And as people have pointed out, the reason the years of experience and education might be very different for men and women is because despite all of this feminist and women's liberation programming, women still do often like to have babies and raise them. Women often do decide to stay home for a while. And then people act like, well, they shouldn't be punished for it. Well, no one's punishing you, but why should you get paid the same as someone who has way more experience than you? You shouldn't. You chose to go have a baby, and I don't care. Yeah, do both. But don't pretend like you get to, like, then jump back up to people who are been working the whole time, understanding that industry the whole time, getting skills the whole time, and pretend like you just get to be in parity with them. Like, that's insanity. Why would that be fair? That would never be fair. So even the pay gap thing has a lot of problems with that argument, and it doesn't actually seem like there is a pay gap. And now it's going the other way where sometimes women are actually getting paid more because people are terrified. They're terrified to not pay them more because 'cause they're gonna get fucking sued, screamed at, canceled, like, there will be economic repercussions for them because of female privilege, because women can do that, because women can cry and scream and kick, and even when what they're saying is not rational or true, society's like, "Oh, women's oppression, you just give it to them." Like, Jesus. So manipulative. Wellness Path asks a great question. Why did the men sign up for this? I know, I would quit. But think about it. If you were on the men's team and you were like in rejection of this and you were in protest of this and you wanted to quit, or you would be fucking lambasted. You might even get like kicked off, blacklisted, never hired again. I mean, this is like the culture we live in now. This is cancel culture. But yes. Wellness Path also says 100% truth. The male players are more popular because they are male. It's their increased physicality that makes them more popular. And that's an interesting take too. When we were talking about it on day zero earlier, we were just saying, Charlie, I think, was saying like men are faster, they're quicker, the game moves more quickly, more faster pace, there's more action, and they're more skilled physically. Same thing that you're saying. It is more exciting. And it is because they're men, and women just aren't as good. They're not as muscular, they're not as fast, they don't have fast burst muscle tissue as easily or frequently or commonly in their bodies, right? There's reasons. There's biological reasons. It's just not as fun. It's not as cool to watch. I'm not gonna lie either. We were just talking about this the other day. When I found out, football, don't really care about it. I don't really care about most sports. I kind of like watching soccer. Every once in a while, I watch football if like the team I'm supposed to love is doing well. It like gets exciting when everyone around me is really excited, and I get caught up in that. Like I can get caught up in that, and that can be fun for me, and I don't mind it. But when I found out there was a women's like lingerie football team, I was like, "Oh, I wanna watch that." Like, that sounds fucking awesome. Because it's novel, because they're fucking sexy, and because who wouldn't wanna watch a bunch of girls who aren't good at football? They are actually really good at football. I'm just saying not as good as, like, professional male athletes in football. But I was very impressed with their skills. Uh, who wouldn't wanna watch that? That's fucking awesome. So if the women's soccer team got into lingerie or something and, like, maybe I would enjoy women's soccer, maybe everybody enjoys women's soccer more. And I know a bunch of people out there just went, "Oh, she's, like, objectifying women." Yeah, maybe. I mean, I find the women's bodies very attractive and beautiful, and I find men's bodies very attractive and beautiful too. And when you put them in lingerie, they look even better. So, yeah, I think that's cool. Like, I enjoy beautiful things, and I think many men do too. I think men and women both enjoy beautiful women's bodies. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying that and wanting more of it. And if women want to do it too, then that's cool. And if it makes them money and they get to play a sport and, like, have fun doing it, fuck yeah. That's awesome. Ignoramus Troglodyte in the YouTube chat says, I prefer women's soccer because they're more brutal to each other. Dude, I bet they are. So this is another thing I've noticed since I was young. I don't know if you've noticed it, but women are fucking evil. We're psychological. Maybe not evil, but we are psychologically brutal. And all I'm gonna say all of us are. I'm gonna say some of us have been cowed into submission or are playing the sort of codependent or the like, don't hurt me, don't look at me, or whatever. And some of us go back and forth between the roles or whatever. But it's in there. It's in there. And there's a reason, right? Just like every other difference between men and women, we are much more psychologically. We all know this too. All the men when we were growing up in our schools and whatever, if they had a problem with each other, there might be like a fist fight, and then those same people might be best friends the next day. And whenever there's a problem with the women, one of those girls might leave the school forever because of bullying. And that didn't happen with men, did it? I should know. I was part of the bullying sometimes. And we were awful. And we would like plan the destruction of others and plot it and then carry it out. And it would mostly be psychological, emotional, and mental. And men don't do that shit. Very rarely. Very rarely do they do that. And very commonly do women do that. You can do all the arguing you want that that's a social construct and that we're raised into it and we were programmed into it and whatever. I don't know. I have a whole take on that. That's a whole other episode of like, what is human nature and does it even exist? Doesn't matter though. The differences are there. The differences are there. So yeah. So that would be fun. It would be fun to notice how brutal women are to each other in these sports games. I agree. I would watch for that reason too. In fact, I wonder if I got more into that lingerie football thing, if that's like undercurrent. Many of the games you can like watch the rivalries and shit. That'd be kind of fun. So to look into it a little bit deeper, there was this article, the Washington Post, and it was an analysis article. Are the U.S. women's soccer players really earning less than men? And this is a Reddit thread. I can't read the actual article because I'd have to pay for it, and I'm not going to. I couldn't easily find an article that was going to break down the money that each of them took in revenue. But I did find this comment on this same article. And it said, terrific article, well balanced, though they missed the point about FIFA. It isn't really discriminating. The $400 million men's pool is on a revenue of $6 billion, while the 30 million women's pool is on an estimated revenue of 150 million. And if you turned those into percentages, again, the women are getting overpaid compared to the men. They're getting a much larger slice of the revenue than men are. Women's privilege, female privilege, you can already be making more of a percentage of the revenue you're bringing in and still sue your male counterpart and take and steal their money. And people have all kinds of arguments for this. The stupidest one I've heard lately is that, well, it's not really fair to compare it that way because women's sports haven't had as long for the public to get used to them and like them. I think they've had long enough. Like if they had just started like 2 years ago when you were making this argument, maybe. There's no one in the world at this point who doesn't know that female sports exist. There's no one in the world that doesn't realize they could go watch female sports if they wanted to. It's that nobody's choosing to. Very few people are choosing to. And I will make a bet that if we could somehow get into the truth of the souls of these people who are patronizing the women's sports, I would be willing to bet that many of them, maybe even most of them, are doing it as like a fuck you to the system. They're like, I'm going to go to every game and I'm going to buy merch and whatever because go women. Not because they're like passionate about women's sports or genuinely enjoy it that much. I bet there's very few people who just genuinely enjoy it and have no agenda about it. Which you don't see on the men's side of things. You just see people who genuinely like sports and just want to watch. So we've got some women in the chat who are saying like, yeah, women are like that. Women are psychologically cruel, the most evil in that way. Ooh, yeah, and I don't even have a tab for this in this presentation today. We talking about some history and some this women's soccer thing, but I should have pulled up a tab. Ian in the chat says, I've been divorced. It was an impossible situation. I made too much and not enough all at the same time. And this is sadly the story for so many men. And this is another thing I didn't realize my female privilege on for a really long time. But it is almost 100% that the man is going to not get custody, or not get full custody at least, right? The man is going to be the one that has to foot the bill for many things. The man is going to be the one that has to pay alimony to the woman for the rest of time, child support to the woman for the rest of time, right? And that their their needs and ability to survive are not going to be taken into consideration as much because the woman has the kids to take care of, and we have to give the kids to the women, even if the woman is a borderline personality or narcissistic or abusive psychologically, emotionally, and mentally, which is very hard. It's very hard often for anyone in the family to even know that that's what's happening. It's often very confusing. This is part of why abuse lasts for a long time sometimes. And then it's very hard to prove, right? If not everyone is on the same page. And kids never are. Kids are just caught in the middle. They're confused already. It's terrible. So women who are already possibly psychologically more demented, however you want to describe that, and then might even have these mental illnesses, still are much more likely to be granted custody and get all of this money. Be careful who you marry. Be careful who you have kids with. I would have this these students, and a lot of teachers would be like, oh, I always warn my female students about like date rape and getting with the wrong guy and da da da. And I'm like, that's true. That's good. Those are good things to know about. Because kids will come to you and talk to you about stuff like that. And so you want to be supportive, and you also want to give them healthy warnings. But I would warn my male students too. And I didn't hear anybody talking about this, but I would warn them, like, be careful, like, don't get people pregnant because they own you then for the rest of your life. And all your money for the rest of your life might be theirs. Like, just calm down with that shit. Like, just be careful. Nobody warns you of this stuff, and then you go do it and the rest of your life is screwed. Be careful out there, men. Be careful out there, young guys. Choose your partners wisely. On both sides of the aisle, we need to choose our partners wisely. But the men usually get screwed. It's female privilege. We are only worried about them. We're not worried about the young men for some reason. I love it. Lindsay Smith in the chat says, I just put my kids to bed. I'm barefoot in the kitchen washing dishes. I'm so oppressed. Oh, it's so sad. Green Mountain Girl says, my brother's currently drinking himself to death in large part due to child support and custody issues. It's seriously like men get screwed in this department. Screwed. And I wish I could just like dip into the minds of every single young man in the world and just be like, be careful. Don't have kids with people until you really, really know them deeply for many, many, many years. And even then, sign a fucking agreement ahead of time. Like, is there like the equivalent of a prenuptial for babies, for having kids together? For if you ever get divorced, like who has to do what? That'd be cool. So feminism, in and of itself, it's not that long ago that it came into our lexicon. And what they say is feminism is the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. And that would be fine if that's what feminism continued to mean. This is the denotative meaning. This is the dictionary meaning. But connotatively, in our culture, in our society, feminism has become so much more than just the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. And if you even got into what this even means, it would be a whole can of worms, right? Like, what's the social equality of the sexes? That's part of what gets really hairy, right? what is the social equality of of the sexes? You like have to open the doors for both men and women, or else you're a fucking sexist, or you're socially oppressive, or you have to smile the same at each. You have to say the same types of things. He's like, we start getting into like really weird territory. Economic equality, again, sure, but what do you actually mean? Do you mean that any man and any woman in a similar type of position should be making the exact same money? Because, like, again, now we're getting into like communist sort of ideology, which ignores skill and ignores ability, ignores years of experience, ignores education, and just give everyone whatever they want. That's just, it's much more oppressive than being merit based, which doesn't always exist either, but is my ideal. And political equality, sure, if what you mean is just like we all get one vote and it all counts the same, that's good political equality. But if you mean like there has to be equally as many female governors and mayors and representatives as men, why? Why would we force that? If people want it, they'll choose it. If they don't, they won't. Like, why would we force an equality there? So even the definition in the dictionary gets a little bit problematic. Feminism, it points out, has gone worldwide. There's been women's rights movements. People love to talk about like women's rights to vote and the women's suffrage, and all of this is just like women died for it and fought for it. And sure, yes. And also, a lot of women were like, why are you doing that? We don't even want that. We don't care. And no one cares about those women because apparently you have to go along with this agenda or else you're a self hating, horrifying woman, right? It's like, believe all women and all women and all women except these women. Fuck those women. but not fuck these women, but fuck those women. Like, well, okay, now you've lost me. So anyways, we don't have to go into the whole history of feminism here, but it is interesting to wonder, because again, we're taught that like all throughout history, women have just been fucked, just oppressed, just like oppressed in the worst, horribly oppressive ways, like raped to death and just tortured and chained to stoves and just had like bones thrown at their faces in the caves or whatever, like just crazy. And I wonder how many women throughout history actually lamented their womanhood, right? Or their place in society. I wonder, because I wonder how much of this narrative is just placed upon the top and we just look back and we go, look at this poor woman is just writing in this book, and really she's like sitting there like, man, I'm so happy I get to write in a book. I don't know. I like, why am I allowed to just project onto historical womanhood my idea of what oppression is? People talk about oh, I read her novel. Shoot, she's one of the first. She's supposedly the first female novelist. Let me find out, because now I want to. She wrote under a man's name. Not about women. I want. Maybe it's on here. I was so excited about this book the whole time I was reading it. No, that's not it. Oh, I guess I didn't write this well. Novelist would have been a better search. Good Christ. Oh. Jane Austen is far from England's first great women novelists. Remind me. Oh. I hate it when I can't remember things anyways. I'm sorry to subject you guys to this, but first English female novelist. No. Not Afraben. Fine, maybe I'm not gonna find it. Love Middlesex. Middlesex is the book. Oh, thank you for trying to help. Emily Bronte, no. Middlesex is the piece that I read. Middlesex author. The reason this is interesting is because she no, not Jeffrey. What? Wow, I guess it's not called Middlesex. I was so excited to hit on the name. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop searching for it. It's something like Middlesex. It really is. I thought it was called Middlesex. And anyways, she published it under a man's name because they wouldn't have published it otherwise. So like there are things like that where it's like, yeah, you should be able to publish a novel and be a woman writer or whatever. And so obviously there's some aspects of like female oppression throughout history that we could definitely criticize and we can look at as actually oppressive and actually unfair. And we can see that in any culture through any time in history, things like this. The thing that's interesting to me is again this idea that we're projecting onto history our own idea of what is oppressive without actually like asking people like, did you feel oppressed by this or did you like being in this role in society? Because there's nothing wrong with liking it. There's nothing wrong with liking your role in society. um Middlemarch, no thank you though. George Eliot, thank you so much, Boxer George Eliot is the name. Is it? And is the book called Middlesex? Yeah, it is Middlesex. Why didn't that come up? Anyways, George Eliot is actually a woman, and George Eliot wrote Middlesex. And Middlesex is a great book, and it's actually also about like what might feel like female oppression, women's oppression. When I read the book, though, I was also kind of like, I'll just give you a quick synopsis. This young woman is like super excited about knowledge and passionate about learning. And she meets these two men. One of them like actually loves her and is her age, and there's some passion there, but he's not like an academic or a scholar. One of them is super old and like kind of crusty, but he's like a genius in her eyes and like very smart and intelligent. And so, spoiler alerts, she goes and she marries the older one. And everyone is like, what are you doing? Like, he's older. But she's like, I do what I want because I'm empowered. So part of this is also a story about female empowerment. So she marries who she wants because she's empowered, and she slowly and really learns that this was the wrong choice, that he doesn't love her at all. He doesn't value her as a person. He sees her as a secretary. She is learning a lot. She is able to read and write and do all these things that she's always wanted to do and have that sort of liberated women's sort of life in that way for that time. But she also realizes the other man was actually in love with her, and she was actually in love with him, and that they actually have passion. But now there's nothing you can do because you can't leave your husband, which again was part of the like women's oppression part of it. But part of me, again, reading it was like, I mean, you knew that marrying this guy, you wouldn't be able to leave him. So, like, what did you think was going to happen? So, there's some female oppression aspects of it, and there's some female liberation aspects of it. And it is interesting that the author herself had to publish under a man's name to even get published. Middlemarch. Is it Middlemarch? Anyways, it's Middlemarch or Middlesex or something. So, and it's interesting too, a lot of the aspects of the book are about her life. And so whatever. So we can look, and again, we can see some oppression of women and some struggles women have had in their roles, but we can look at any time in history. We can look at either sex. We can look at any age group. We can look at any color of skin or any ethnic background. We can look at anything, and we can find some people who are seemingly stuck in a role that they don't like and having problems with that. Right? And that is like a human experience thing. It's not a problem of society that we have roles. It's not a problem of society that we differentiate between skills and abilities and qualities and characteristics. None of these are actually problems. It's just that we know and we have sympathy and compassion for those of us who find ourselves in a place or a role that doesn't really fit our soul. That's a human condition sort of thing. So I just don't think it's fair to look back and just be like, all of history, women were just brutally oppressed. And also to ignore that men were too. There is nothing, again, that you can tell me that is feminine or female oppression that we can't also find a male equivalent for. Nothing. You can't say one's worse than the other. Oh, sorry, it was Middlemarch. Middlemarch was the name of her book. So, anyways, moving on to the women's liberation movement. This is just one of the movements. I mean, there was a lot, and all of them were feminist, and all of them worked to liberate women from their shackles and their chains that they had always been horribly oppressed underneath of. Feminist intellectualism emerged in the late 1960s, continued into the 1980s, primarily in the industrialized nations of the Western world. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why were the industrialized nations of the Western world targeted for this. Um, and it's because often this is a communist what am I trying to say? Communist tactic to infiltrate and take down the social structure of a nation, of a sovereign nation. So it affected great change politically, intellectually, and culturally throughout the world. That is true. And there's nothing wrong with like raising the question, and there's nothing wrong with having this movement and the attention coming to it, and people going, I don't know, do I feel oppressed, or is there something else I want in life? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with someone then choosing, like, you know what? They're right. I don't actually ever want to have kids. Cool. Don't ever have kids. Or you know what? I actually do. I want to be the CEO of a fucking international corporation, and I want to be fucking cutthroat and never sleep. Rad. Go do that. Like, you should do whatever you want to do if that's what you really want to do. But I think a lot of this brought in these ideas, these ideologies, the idea of the patriarchy and how men are just like horrible. And it really actually ripped some shit apart. And it also it empowered especially victimhood. And thinking like because you're unhappy with your life, it's a man's fault. Because you didn't choose something, just like the character in Middlemarch didn't choose the right lover, in my opinion, and married the old crusty guy, but that somehow then you're like oppressed as a woman. But like, bitch, you did that to yourself. You chose that person. Why is it society that's at fault? And also, you could fucking divorce anyone at any time in history. Everyone might hate you. That's your choice, though. Maybe it's not fair, but it's your choice. You're powerful. You can do it. SQ 420 is in the house. He knows what I'm talking about. He says the issue is that later on they want a relationship with a man when they bring masculine energy. Yeah. And that's true too. And we joke about this a lot, but it's, I think, very true. There's a lot of these women who are wearing like the pussy hats and they're like screaming in the streets and they're like really fucking angry and miserable and they're like hate men, but like really their like dream, like their secret dream is that a giant steroid buffed out, like dripping sweat man will just come in and just like throw them on the bed and just take them. But they'll act like all men are horrible. Men are horrible. Masculinity is toxic. But it's like, but that's actually what you want more than anything is to be a woman again and to have a real man. Honestly, I think that's what like a lot of women and I don't think they'll let themselves do it. A lot of these women, I think they're stuck in their ideological box and they're stuck in the idea that they're oppressed and they're stuck in the idea that all men are these just like masculine asshole fucking sick like toxic whatever, or most of them even, or whatever. And it stops them from really actually being like, no, you know what? I really love the young guy who I have passionate connection with and not the old crusty guy who offers me the status I wanted. Right? That's what that book is really about, in my opinion. That Middlemarch book. So all of this work by women to free themselves is cool. Free yourself. Whatever you need to do, whatever you feel like you need to do to free yourself, like go do it. But now if you're stuck in this little box that says this is how women have to be, well, what have you freed yourself from? You just put yourself in a new box. And then what did you get out of it? The ability to go work your life away and vote and like run for office? Are those the most fulfilling aspects of life? Because if so for you, cool. But if not for you, like that's okay, but it's like not okay anymore. It's not okay. It's very rare. And in fact, I remember having this argument with feminists even when I was a feminist. Feminist? That's what we should call it. It's a communist feminist. Feminist. I remember having this argument of like, well, shouldn't we be just as excited for women who want to find a man, get married, buy a house, have some babies, stay at home, take care of the man, have a garden and like homestead or whatever? Like, shouldn't we be stoked about that? Why? Because it seemed to me like those of us who are in my like, social spheres, the communist leftist sort of thing, it seemed like it was like disgusting. It was disgusting to people when women wanted that. You're a self-hating woman if you want to stay home. You're a self-hating woman if you don't want to go out, never have children, get a bunch of abortions if you need to, work as a CEO somewhere, fight your way to the top of a power structure and whatever. If you don't do that, you're disgusting. Who cares if that's what actually makes you happy or not? Right? Very good point. Green Mountain Girl says a lot of today's men are emasculated by their mothers. Yeah. Oh, and it's so sad. And a lot of these women are fucking narcissists. This is something I really love. I know I talk about him all the time, but he's just one of my favorite podcasts and thinkers. And his name is Josh Slocum from Disaffected. He's been on the show before. You may remember. Maybe you watch his show or listen to his show now because of that. Or maybe you already did. But he talks about it a lot, that this actually disproportionately borderline personality disorder and narcissism in women. Disproportionately. And other types of mental disorders similar to those. Disproportionately, women have these control issues. And part of that expresses as emasculating their young boys. And also abusing their young daughters. Right? And also just abusing people in their lives in general because they're not well. Because society has really worked to create this ideology and to create this sort of psychology that I don't think is very good for most women. And I think it's very unsettling. And I think, a lot of people are going to hate this. You know how dogs need an alpha? Like a pack needs an alpha. This is just something they need. This is part of their structure. And when you have a dog and you don't have any other dogs and you are not that dog's alpha, that dog is stressed out. That dog's like, well, then who's the fucking alpha? Am I the alpha? Well, am I supposed to be controlling you? Well, then why do you leave the house without me? Because that's an alpha's job to do. And everything is fucking crazy for them. It's bad for them. And I feel like it's similar. I feel like women many times actually want. I don't think like you just need it because you're born a woman, but I just think it is much more natural. It is much more likely that women just want someone who will take care of things. And if there's a danger, go take care of it and bring back the money and the sustenance. And I'll stay here and take care of all this shit. I'm really good at nesting. I'm really good at cooking. I have an instinct for those things and I enjoy them. They fulfill me. I think we can see that over and over again. I saw this thing a long time ago. I wish I could pull it up now, but I don't want to do what I just did to you with Middlemarch and George Eliot, so I won't. But I'll summarize it for you. You can go find it if you want to. But it was talking about women and men and what they do after sex. After ejaculative coitus with one another. In a heterosexual sexual experience, after ejaculative coital relations have been successful, men tend to fall asleep. And women tend to get up and clean and make food and nest. And this is like, no one taught you that. I remember being taught a lot of things about sex way before I should have been taught them, but no one taught me, okay, and after you have sex, you go around and you clean and you make food and stuff. Nobody did that, but that's still the instinct. Nobody did that to anybody, but that's still the instinct. Nobody told men you fall asleep afterwards. Assert your dominance by falling asleep. Like, no, it's just what we do. And it's because men are often, in many, especially in the human species, but in many species, they're out gathering and they're out getting stuff and they're out working and they're out like really working like physically hard and possibly facing great danger. So they're fucking tired. They go to sleep and they feel safe in the nest and they go to sleep. And the woman is like excited because she just maybe got baby and baby might be coming on the way. So we got to make things nice and good. It's just fucking nature. And I think sometimes women just need that and men just need that. And that's okay. And I don't, again, we're not talking tonight about trans people or gay people, and they may need totally different things or have different, it doesn't even matter. I don't care. We're talking about heterosexual females and men. This natural order. You cannot fight it, as Illuminati says, and you cannot recreate it. And it is true. X Cube says, we give women energy during sex. Men are drained of energy. It is true. Even if the woman was like the dominant and the man was the submissive or whatever, if you're going with like those types of relationships or whatever, it's still true. Energetically, in most spiritual traditions throughout history, the man gives his chi to the woman, or at least releases it into the ether, and the woman receives extra chi. So men literally drain their spiritual, mental, emotional, physical energy, and women receive. So that also makes sense. It's funny. I love It's Business Time by Flight of the Conchords. Great. It's hard for me to read the YouTube comments because they're so far away. Let's see. Oh, we're talking about the debt-based money system and how to seize control of it in the chat and YouTube. I love it. Got a bunch of rebels in here. Yes. Many women are narcissistic. Wellness Path is pointing out. The receiver and the giver. Yeah, we're receiving energy because we're creating with it. We receive energy and we make a baby with it. We receive energy like otherwise, and we go clean and get the nest ready with it. And so we are giving after we receive. We receive it for a good reason. We're not just like sucking you dry. Like it's a nice balance, really. But they're both a little give and take there. Michelle's Healing Home is here. She says, I'm so glad to hear you talking about this subject. I'll have to come back and listen. I'm just dropping in. Awesome to see you, Michelle. Do come back. So this is a great article. This is EVIE Magazine, EVIE magazine.com. And it's called, the title of it is, Was Feminism a PSYOP to Get Women to Pay More Taxes to the Government? This is actually from this year. And I expected this to be a much more feminist take and maybe like the arguments against, or, you know, because that's another thing. Go search for anything feminist. Go search for anything that is like critical of feminism and see what you get in search results. Very controlled. All you will get is the how to refute the anti-feminist rhetoric and like all this shit for pages and pages and pages. Like you can't find it very easily. So I was kind of expecting this to be a bunch of bullshit, but it's pretty good. So this is by Robin Riley. Is it a man or is it a woman? I don't know. We'll go with women. So she says, it has been said that the first building block of a dynasty is the self-sufficient home. Women's traditional roles were a crucial part of creating independence and freedom from the corrupt state for the family. This is just a great opening point. Like, the state is corrupt. There's never been a not corrupt state. And we've always known it until very recently. As a society and as a culture in general throughout history, we've understood that states are corrupt and you have to protect yourself from them. And the family, she's pointing out. And especially the legacy you leave. So the intergenerational family, right? You pass this down and now you have this land and now you pass that down and now we're growing our wealth and right? Especially that this is actually independence from the corruption of the state. And she says women's traditional roles were a crucial part of that. All of those are great points. So there's a reason already just from this first statement in this article why the state might have a vested interest in corrupting that and tearing that apart. Beyond just getting extra taxes, which if you've looked into this issue at all, you know is one of the major criticisms of feminism was that it was this psyop just to get more taxes, like get more working people in the system by a huge amount. That's half the population is women. But this is an even deeper reason. It's an even darker reason. It's an even more nefarious reason, and it's a very effectively pulled off by the communists as well. So she goes on to say women held the crucial positions of community organizers, teachers, mothers, homemakers, Good Samaritans of the underprivileged through church related efforts, holistic nutritionists, midwives, healers, long before feminism was even a glimmer in a suffragette's eye. Again, fantastic point. Just these 2 points are all we really need to talk about for a whole show, but like nailed it. And how many of these things are left anywhere now that women have been thrust into equality, alleged equality, right? Alleged economic, political, social equality. Very few. You have to work really hard to find holistic nutritional information. You have to work really hard to teach yourself these things so that you might be able to help yourself and others heal from things. To be a midwife is all sorts of bullshit now. It's all wrapped up in red tape. It used to just be what women did for each other. You just learned it growing up. Daughters would be in there watching too, and they'd be like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. Right? Like you would just know these things, just like we learned whatever shit we learned from our mothers in this society, which is often very different unless we had very, very good mothers. Community organizers, teachers, homemakers. You know, whether or not it's in church related things or not, like women were also the ones who were organizing things to help the underprivileged in whatever ways in different societies throughout time. All of these roles are beautiful. Why would you want to erase them? Oh, because it's better for the state. It's better for the corrupt state if you don't have these roles being fulfilled by knowledgeable, skilled women. I love it. Illuminati is bringing up Aaron Russo's excellent interview on the Rockefeller Plan for Feminism. He had a lot of insights into their plans for us, and a lot of them have come true since then, haven't they? Great point. So she goes on to say, women held these important positions not because they had been forced to be there, but because their natural skill sets and personalities drew them to these areas of expertise. The roles held by women in the pre-feminism world were indeed valued and seen as essential and honorable. Yes, they were. Like, no man was like, let me get in there and deliver that baby myself. Get out of the way. Well, clearly doctors eventually were, but before them, men weren't like itching to do that. And they were like, thank God you guys have got that fucking taken care of, because like that's not what I want to do. Right? Men weren't like, actually, like, let me. And again, some men, yeah, and some women didn't want to do it. And like, whatever, that shit always happens in every group. Sorry that we don't even need to talk about it because it's just obvious. There's always people who are not happy in whatever role they find themselves in. That's not the point. Many people were deeply happy, deeply honored, deeply valued, men and women alike valued that women were doing these things. Oh, and don't even get me started on things where like, yeah, but then they were like burned as witches. Well, so were men. And actually, it seems when you look into it that a lot of men and women were burned as witches or tortured or whatever, not even necessarily because of like what they were doing, but because of the political or social power structures in that place and what people could get out of it. Again, it was corruption. So it wasn't this like sexist thing. They weren't like, let's get all the fucking women and burn them. Right? And again, part of that might have had to do with wanting to stamp out people's ability to be independent, to heal themselves, and to have these sorts of skills and traditions. That's his whole own show as well. But it wasn't this just like hateful towards women sort of thing like we're supposed to think it is. We're supposed to see it that way. That's all any of us have ever been indoctrinated into, that ideology. In the last century, she goes on to say the powerful impact women have had on this essential aspect of Western culture has been neutered in the process of making us mere producers and consumers. And let's just emphasize that because that is what has been done. We have been taken out of our homes. We've been taken away from making families. We've been taken away from midwiving and being nutritionists and healers and all of these things just so we could have a job and make some dollars and pay taxes. Do you feel equal now? You're equally oppressed. You're even more oppressed than you were before in that sense. To say that women are powerless because they don't have the power that men have is not to understand feminine power at all. And I agree with that, right? Women have our own type of power. We have our own type of energies. We have our own type of skills and abilities natural to us, inherent in being female. And so do men. And they're both awesome. They're both perfect, actually. She goes on to say, this is not to say there were no women specific issues that caused life to be challenging. Certainly, the past was a brutal place for all who inhabited it. Let's read that again. It was a brutal place for all who inhabited it. All people are oppressed. All people have a hard time at living. Men are not privileged to escape the horrors of life. We all have to experience that together in different ways. She goes on to say, but it is to say that women have always been empowered through work within and outside the home. But what if the idea that women needed an ideological political movement or a pantsuit in order to become who they're meant to be is a mere psyop, intended in reality to make them taxable, accounted for, obedient workers? And then she goes into the Marxist roots of feminism. She says feminist and socialist ideologies share many similarities. Socialism, with its original focus on workers' rights, concentrated on the conflict between oppressor and oppressed as it's pertained to the upper and lower economic classes in society. Feminism uses the same dichotomy, but instead of oppressor and oppressed being seen from the economic standpoint, it's seen from the perspective of gender. They both pertain to power in society. Who has it, its rightful distribution. Haves and the have-nots become masculine and feminine. So masculines are haves and women are have-nots. And again, this just ignores, it just like pares it down to the least common denominator and ignores all of the rich diversity actually inherent in women's and men's experiences. But that's what you have to do to subvert this and to rip women out of the household. So she says both ideologies seek the same end via leveling natural differences of competence, skill, ambition, ability, and economic or genetic inheritance in the pursuit of equality. And this is what we're seeing really disgustingly right now, where biological men who are born male are dominating in female sports because they say that they feel like they're a woman. And their natural abilities are completely different, right? But we say they're equal, and they're just not. It's just a blatant lie. It's a blatant lie. And someone's going to be like, "Oh, but there's like some men who just like feel like me." There are always going to be those exceptions. It doesn't matter. Overall, we're very different. Very, very different. They claim that meritocracy is flawed, she says, and that the natural order was rigged, and that the lifting the weak up and keeping the strong down, everyone would be freer. Of course, the opposite is actually true. Women were hoodwinked by feminism, she says, to believe they have no power if not the power of a man. Nothing could be further from the truth. Men and women lay claim to the complementary but essentially different kinds of power. To say that women are powerless because they don't have the power that men have is not to understand feminine power at all. Women have their own gender-specific, life-giving power, which is creative and nurturing at its core, without which civilization could not function. Just as men are with their protective, laboring, and innovative prowess. Both are necessary, and despite what the feminism claims, they're not interchangeable. Why Marxists target women specifically, she says it's certainly not a conspiracy to believe in the connection between women's empowerment narratives and Marxist ideology. Lenin was open about his mission to destroy the nuclear family by pushing women into the workforce. So let's just stop for a second and remember that Black Lives Matter is also an openly Marxist-Leninist organization, and that on their page, before people noticed, called it out, and were upset about it, you can still find it on the Wayback Machine, but you cannot find it there now. They had an entire page on the Black Lives Matter website that talked about how they wanted to specifically destroy the nuclear family. They're not hiding it. Marxists and Leninists are very open about this because the nuclear family is more powerful than the state. As far as individuals go, we have more loyalty and emotion and passion and connection to our families than we do to the state. And that is dangerous to the state. So they know that they have to rip that apart in order to have the centralized power of the state be total and complete. It's very simple. It's very nefarious and dark. All right. Equal pay for equal work slogan, she says, of today's feminists was officially legislated for the first time by Lenin's Bolshevik government. What a surprise. By pushing women out of the home, Marxists were able to achieve two goals at once. They destroyed the biologically strong glue of the nuclear family while doubling their workforce. Ha. So then she talks about taxes and how they can tax more people. The government gets stronger, gets more money because there's more women paying taxes into the system. And then she talks about how it's bad for the family, but great for the economy. The most nefarious, she says, result of feminism is possibly the misdirection involved in pitting men against women and making men the source of all women's hardship. Rather than teaching women to take ownership of their situation and facilitating a belief that women thriving in their natural roles is not only enough, but essential. Women are trapped in the constant hamster wheel of trying to be a great employee and a great mother at the same time. No wonder so many women feel like failures. Yeah, it is hard to have a job and raise a family. And instead of saying, wow, maybe I don't actually want the job, or maybe I didn't want the family and I chose it anyways for some reason, maybe I should pick between the two. Women instead will be like, why aren't the men doing this? Why aren't the men like having the babies and staying home and having a job? Bleh. Bitch, why don't you just fucking choose what you want? Why don't you empower yourself to stop being a victim and do what you like? And I don't care what it is. I really don't. I don't care if you wanna go work your life away. I don't care if you wanna have 75 babies. I want you to do what you wanna do. I don't want you to blame men for your misery. Nobody made you. No man made you do anything, and if you say so, you're the one disempowering yourself. You're saying that you're weak enough to let someone make you do this. It's ridiculous. So, I love this point too. She says, by making men the scapegoat for the historical and modern issues facing women, elites and social engineers of the day conveniently get overlooked in their role in keeping both men and women down. It's true. Closing thoughts, she says, British author G.K. Chesterton once said, Chesterton keeps popping up, and I just really love him. I need to read more like by him. He has a website that's really well organized and full of his amazing quotes. And he came up in that Italian woman's speech. She would love this article, I'm sure. She was actually talking about similar things. And now he's coming up here, and someone else has been mentioning him. Like, he just keeps popping up. I swear to God, I never heard of him until like the past month, and now I hear of him all the time. So that's like the universe screaming at me that we should all read more Chesterton. But anyways, he once said, quote, feminism is a muddled idea that women are free when they serve their employers, but slaves when they help their husbands. And that is the fucking truth. But the same people who are like, women need to like do this and that, they also will be the same people who are like, we're all wage slaves and like capitalism is bad. It's like, but you're so confused. You're so confused. Whatever you are, you're always the victim. Whatever you are, you're never responsible for your own self, your own misery, and your own happiness. And that's, I guess, a convenient place to be if you never want to grow or take control of your life and create something beautiful out of it. For more than a century, she says, women have been sold the idea that getting out into the workforce and paying income tax would be a path to their liberation, independence, and freedom. So perhaps you should ask yourself who has benefited the most from this fundamental restructuring of society. Who has benefited the most? Definitely not women. In fact, I was trying to find the graph that was women's happiness and self satisfaction in life. And you can see it continuously has gone down, 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 down as women have left. Probably children's have too, and probably men's have too, because the whole family is different now than it was. Yeah. So, I also people will often just like sport this lie as though it's like fact, and it's always been interesting to me. Even when I was a feminist, leftist, more of that sort of world, I still was like, what? Because women would say things like, we need more women in power, and then we wouldn't have war. And I was like, do these women not know the women I know? Because I don't know any women who would be great at stopping war. I don't know any women who would be like great at being leaders without becoming fucking psychopaths. I think a lot of just leadership positions end up with psychopaths occupying them. Like, I think that that's part of it. If you're not a psychopath when you get there, you're going to become one, because that's what like CEOs and presidents of that's what they have to be. They do some fucked up shit. They really have to like separate from their emotional, you know, compassionate side in order to do the things they do and like meet the bottom dollar and get that fiduciary duty fulfilled and all of this. So I don't understand the argument. I've never understood that argument. Men who are trying to like get the feminist pussy will definitely say these things. Oh, if we just had more women. And I'm like, well, I mean, that sounds nice. I'm sure a lot of girls are like, yeah, that guy's controllable. I'll get him. Right? Like, and then we'll both be miserable together. But I don't know. No one's ever given a real good argument why they think that, but a lot of people will say it. A lot of people will say it. Uh, and we're still talking about this gap, the gap in women's leadership. There's not enough women in power. We need way more women in power. Like, I don't know, the women like AOC, Hillary Clinton, Margaret Thatcher, like these women are fucking psychos. They're not well. They're definitely not more compassionate. Definitely not. They're not more effective. They haven't stopped any wars. In fact, these fucking bitches right here were all just like, yeah, go war. We want to have war with Ukraine. What? How are they stopping wars? And all of these numbers, they're like, women are half the population, but they're only like 30% of the government. Well, like, sorry, I don't think most women want to be psychopathic rulers over their fellow people. I don't think it's a natural female inclination. I do think a lot of women are like forcing themselves into that and they think that it's empowering. And so they do it. And again, their happiness seems to go down, 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 down. And I'm sure there's some women who would be fantastic. I'm sure there's some women who would be great leaders and would try to create peace. I'm sure there's some women who genuinely wanted that more than anything else, and it actually does make them very fulfilled and happy. But it is not the norm, and it is not natural. There's no evidence that they're better leaders. There's no evidence that they're going to stop wars or stop fighting or be more compassionate or anything else. In fact, there's been plenty of evidence that when women go into these types of positions, they start adopting male characteristics. And you can bullshit me all you want about like, well, they have to do that to survive in that world. Yeah, in a way, you're right. But in no way does that mean that the people there were like, won't let them be more feminine. It's that to be effective in that type of world, you'd have to be more like, it's just like if you were going to go out hunting with your bare hands, you'd have to fucking be a little bit more masculine, be more aggressive, like get more fast twitch muscle if you could possibly do that, and all kinds of other things. It's not because the people who are hunting are like, you can't hunt with us, bitch. That's not why. It's that the environment and the role and the situation demand certain things, and those things happen to be more well fitted to men. It's not that hard to understand. And people who think that's somehow hateful, that I hate women because I'm describing reality, those people aren't well. And they're really loving staying in their victim position. They love it. They have never, in fact, even questioned it because they get so much female privilege out of it. So much female privilege. X Cube says, there's nothing more fulfilling for me than knowing I'm able to take care of my woman. If women can make their man feel that way, then this is the biggest victory of all. I know. And I love it. I love finally having a man who's actually a man. Sorry, other men. It's not like a no one I ever dated before this like wasn't actually a man. But like a lot of people I dated were not, because I was doing that same thing I described earlier, where I was like, "Ooh, yeah, look at this man. He'll do whatever the fuck I want him to do." I feel disgusting about that, but that's true. This is one of the many ways I've grown a lot in my life. As I'm much less manipulative in that way, controlling, and I'm much more satisfied. I'm much happier now. I'm much more happy being with someone who can actually be like a protector to me and like someone who can take care of me and like be a man. Fuck, it's amazing. He opens doors for me, and at first I was so like weirded out and confused. I was like, what is this? What kind of magic is this? What trickery is this? Like, and finally I'm like, this is fucking rad. I get doors open for me. He brings me flowers and shit. I'm like, wow. And he gets to feel just as good because he gets to feel how happy I am, how happy he makes me, how cool it is to take care of someone, right? It's beautiful. Very, very fulfilling. I hope everybody gets to experience as fulfilling of a relationship as I get to right now. It's nothing toxic about it. There's nothing self-hating about it. It is beautiful for us to know what we want and then experience it and do it. And if what you want is to wear a pink pussy hat and be miserable in the street screaming at people, then go do that too. That's also cool. And I love this point, and I first heard it from Jordan Peterson. And actually, Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, think he's a shill or not, a lot of the points Jordan Peterson has made over the years are part of what helped me to question my own indoctrination and ideology and whatnot in order to come to, I think, a more sensible place in life. And this is one of the points he made, and this page is just here to remind me to talk about it. But this is a Reddit thread. And the question is, why aren't women fighting for almost entirely male-dominated blue-collar jobs? Garbage disposal workers, sewer workers, coal miners, they're almost all male-dominated, and no one's calling for equality there. And so the first time I heard that, it was Jordan Peterson saying that, like, women are only asking for equality when power is involved or money is involved or status is involved, but never when hard work is involved, never when self-sacrifice is involved. Right? And I know some badass women who are fucking electricians and shit, and they're like buff and they're like hard fucking workers and they're covered in dirt and sweat at the end of the day. And they're tough fucking ladies. I know some fucking badasses like that, and they love it, and I'm happy for them. And no one's saying you can't go do that, but you do not see feminists demanding get more women coal miners. You're sexist. You're not actively trying to hire female bricklayers. Right? Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. And just like I said, women were not demanding to be drafted ever. No women has ever demanded to be drafted, I don't think. And why not? If you're so concerned about equality, if you're so concerned about representation, why wouldn't you? This just proves the lie to all of it. Any feminist, you can bring this up. What are they fucking going to say to you? Nothing. Because they don't actually want that type of equality. They want your power and they want your money. And then they want to be narcissistic and abuse you about it. And they want to be miserable as fuck. And that's it. I have never met a happy, well-adjusted, mentally well, emotionally well feminist in my life. You know, and if the definition of feminism was just that we find equal value in men and women, I think everybody would be a feminist. I think very rarely are there actually people who are like truly hateful or actually think that one sex or the other is inherently worse or something. I think most people are like, yeah, women have a fucking role and a place in the world, and men have a role and a place in the world and abilities and whatever, and they're both rad. One's not better than the other. One's better than the other at things. Men are better bricklayers. Men are better basketball players. Women are better healers or nurturers, birthers, mothers, whatever, caretakers, naturally, but they're not more valuable. I don't think anybody thinks that except the rare fucking idiot. Martin Davis says, 1480 and 1913, Europe's queens were 27% more likely than its kings to wage war, according to a National Bureau of Economics. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's what I felt like. I'm like, I can't really prove it, but in my mind, if we were ruled by only women, we would have some fucked up wars going on that like didn't make any sense. We already do, but in different ways. Different ways. All right. This is an article from JSTOR. It's called Gender Differences in Human Abilities. Can Practice Moderate Results? And I just wanted to point this out to, again, remind me to talk about it, but also to remind us that it is a pretty well-established scientific fact that men and women are, in fact, inherently different in capability, likelihood to have certain proclivities, and more. So in this review, the evidence regarding sex differences in perceptual, cognitive, and motor skills is looked at in general. They focus on gender differences and spatial abilities in an area where there are consistent and pervasive differences between males and females. The nature of the differences are explored, including possible reasons why these differences exist and whether differential performance on spatial tasks can be moderated by practice. So one of the things that is just true is that men tend to be way better with spatial relationships than women. Right? We do tend to also have differences in the other things they listed, which were perceptual, cognitive, and motor skills, right? We have just women and men just have different. They could have gone into many other things too, like our physical abilities, strength, and all the things we've already kind of mentioned in this talk tonight. But those things are also differences, and the spatial relationship is one I often look at and laugh at because I like fucking suck like so bad at spatial relationships. It's ridiculous. I tell this story a bit, but I grew up thinking that I was somewhat tall because literally all of my female friends were shorter than me, and I didn't do that on purpose. That just happened. And it turns out I'm actually not tall at all. I'm 5'4", and I'm technically petite because petite is 5'4" and under. I'm 5'4", and all of my friends were shorter than me. And so I thought I was kind of tall. And I had the hardest time understanding why some men like thought I wasn't tall and treated me like I was small. And it was so weird for me. And then I finally like learned that I was petite, and I was like super confused. I'm not joking you. And then I was like, oh, no wonder all these different things in my life, like people like called me short or called me small. And I was just so like weirded out by it. But it makes sense to me. Again, all my friends were shorter than me. And I thought I was tall. I was the tall one in the group. I didn't have a fucking good grasp on spatial relationships. Somebody asked me like how far away something is. I'm like, oh, it's like a couple miles. And then it's like 3 blocks away. Right? People ask me like how like long something is, and I'm like, I don't know, that's probably like 7 feet, and it's like 3. Like I fucking suck at all categories of spatial relationships so bad. And that's very normal for women. And then most of the men in my life don't have those same issues, and they're really, really good at spatial relationships, and they can nail a fucking length, even a weight, right? They can nail all of this stuff, and I can't. And that's normal. That's a normal difference between the sexes. And people will argue this all the time, and they'll be like, well, that's because boys are raised with like tools and measuring sticks and stuff, and women aren't. I was raised the exact same way my brother was. I tell people this all the time. I crawled around in ditches like an army person. I climbed trees. I was a super tomboy. I did much more male things than female. I didn't want to do the female things much of the time. If I did it, it was because I was like, well, I guess that's what all these bitches are doing, so I'll play Barbies or something. I didn't really want to, though. I wanted to be out running and climbing trees and doing stuff. Today, I would be like, have my boobs cut off and be called Larry or something. Right? But back then I was just a tomboy, and it was cool. So if it was actually about culture, if it was actually about what was expected of us or what environment we were put in or what we were allowed to play with or expected to play with, I would have really good spatial relationship understandings and spatial reasoning. And I don't. This is just one story. I get it. It's not a vast study, but we found this consistently over time as a difference between men and women. So there are many differences between men and women, and they seem to be inherent. They seem to be natural and organic. They seem not to be too much to do with the nurture and much more to do with the nature of who and what we are. This whole article, again, aims to present practice and memorization and stuff to get that gap closer. So like they would be trying to get me to have better spatial relationship as compared with men. And my life has shown me that that does not change anything. I've measured plenty of things, and I've been corrected plenty of times, and I know I have this handicap, and I still don't get better at it. So who knows? Maybe some other people would, but not me. This is another interesting thing that a lot of people will point out, and I think very mistakenly will talk about. And I was ignorant to this too, and I mistakenly talked about this too for years and years and years until I went and lived in Turkey. I went and lived in Turkey, and in Turkey it's very secular, and a lot of people walk around in just whatever I might wear and looking whatever. And a lot of people walk around veiled and covered and all sorts of different levels of covering because there's lots of different levels, right? Some people literally just like a slit for their eyes and then full black. And some people, the whole face is showing, but just not the hair or the neck. There's all kinds of different levels. So in Turkey, I got to see all of that. And I went into Turkey with this leftist ideology where I was like, this is so oppressive. So oppressive. The Middle East is so oppressive towards women. All these women have to cover themselves and they feel like they have to, and they're just enslaved. And it was mind blowing to me to learn from women there that lots of women liked to be covered, enjoyed it, felt like they were precious because they were cherished, because they were held, just for those who were special enough, safe enough, trusted enough to see them and no one else. And they loved it. They treasured it. And you can fucking do that whole thing where, again, you're like, well, they were raised that way and they were indoctrinated into it. And so they've never questioned it. Dude, they're just like you. Have you questioned the shit? Yes, you have. Why wouldn't they have questioned it? Everybody questions things, especially when you're like a teenager. You question fucking everything. Like, don't degrade them by pretending like they're not capable of thought and choice. And again, this is in Turkey where they could have easily chosen to leave whenever family or culture they were, tradition or whatever, and go somewhere and wear whatever the fuck they wanted, and they would have been fully accepted. Most women in Turkey I knew wore clothes like I do. But a lot of people covered themselves. And so this idea that that's really oppressive is actually just a projection. It's actually just your fucking view of this, not having actually been in the culture, not having actually talked to the people there. And yeah, there's some women who like wish they weren't and don't want to be and feel stuck and feel oppressed. Again, like we talked about, there's always going to be someone in their role who doesn't want to be there and feels stuck in it. That's its own thing to talk about. It's not sexist, it's not oppressive. Again, in Turkey, there's actually a female privilege that you get to choose to do any level of these things, from full fucking walk down the street in slut gear to like full fucking covered, just your eyes are showing. Anything you want. That's pretty fucking empowering if you ask me. But our other misperception about this is that it's like just an Islamic thing or it's just a Middle Eastern thing. But in Christianity, we have the tradition of the habit as well. We have the tradition of the nun's habit, in which every single part of the woman was covered except her face, all of her hair, all of her neck, all the way down, all of her ankles, all of her feet. Right? And we actually have that in every tradition. We have some equivalent of women being fully covered. So it's also just really almost narcissistic in a way to be like, oh, the Middle East is so oppressive to women and women have to cover themselves. In every culture, there's been women covering themselves for various reasons. And many women want to, and they've chosen it. So stop it with this bullshit. Stop projecting your shit onto these women. There was women who would like, it was funny. They would like be like, yeah, it's fucking awesome and I love it. And under all this, I'm wearing like the sexiest lingerie. And so all day I get to feel like super fucking amazing. And again, I'm precious and I'm protected and no one gets to know except my chosen lover. Like, how beautiful is that? That's fucking amazing. Here's the veil worn by women in Western culture as well, but often just for mourning, but still another example. And so it's interesting. And again, I don't even know if this article is like pro or anti or if it's critical of it or not. I just wanted to remember that there's a million reasons why women might cover themselves and it doesn't have to be oppressive. And not many people question this. It's worth questioning. Maybe you want to cover yourself more, whatever. Bear yourself, cover yourself. It doesn't matter to me. Do what makes you happy. Just don't pretend like people are oppressed when they choose to cover themselves. Okay, and I love this, right? So we were talking about too, like, were women more oppressed in history? Because this is another thing where people will be like, oh, well, you can't argue that women have always been the oppressed sex. All throughout history, women have been fucked. I'm like, that is also what I was indoctrinated to, but I don't actually have any evidence of it, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This is a review on a book called The Privileged Sex. And actually, let's look at what that is. I have a feeling it's about the women. It's about female privilege, and now I might buy it and read it. But this review says if any tenet of feminism receives even more widespread assent than that which maintains that women today are oppressed, it is that which asserts that women were even more oppressed in the past before modern feminism liberated them. It says Van Crelveld's book, which is this book he's reviewing, which is The Privileged Sex, turns the conventional wisdom on its head. Far from being oppressed, women are privileged and have been throughout recorded history. Quote, judged by almost any criterion, women are and always have been the privileged sex. That's from page 238 of the book. He says the bulk of this book is therefore concerned not with contemporary conditions, but with history. However, surveying the entire course of human history is such a vast project that errors are unavoidable. Then he goes in some of the errors that were made. This is like a critique of the book. And so I don't want to go into those. I don't want to be a spoiler alert. And actually, there's a lot of them. But it's just interesting to me because what if women have been more privileged throughout history? And how do we even, you know, what am I trying to say? How do we even define like what would be more privileged or less privileged? I would feel more privileged not having to go into any war zone ever. I really like when I'm really looking at history and I'm wondering like in most time periods would I choose to be a woman or a man? I kind of feel like I'd probably choose to be a woman most often. It's interesting I've had many past life memories arise for myself, which you guys have probably heard me talk about many times, but there's like 6 or 7, and 100% of them I've been a woman. So I think I really literally have chosen that again and again and again. And if it was so bad, why would I choose it? If it was so bad. But if I get to, in most of those situations, almost never be put into a dangerous situation. Again, people act like women have always been just like a fucking beat the shit out of and raped like constantly by every man in their lives all throughout history. And it's like, I think women have most often been very cherished and very protected, especially by the men in their lives. And that sometimes really bad shit has happened to everybody in every time period of both sexes. But that is often true, and that women are almost never expected to go out into those dangerous situations, and that men almost always are, and do have to go out and face like beasts and other men and wars and all kinds of dangers so that women and children can be protected. How often have we heard that? Women and children first. Get off the fucking boat first. Get out of danger first. So there's an argument to be made. This book might be really good. It's The Privileged Sex. Ever since Betty Friedan published The Feminine Mystique back in 1963, all of us have been told that women are discriminated against, oppressed, exploited, and abused by men. The barrage of accusations is intense, relentless, and seems to have neither beginning nor end. But are the charges true? Do women really have a worse time of it than men? I might want to read that book. I'm going to leave that one open. Taking it over to a different place so I can remember. All right. Where were we? So, moving on. I also get this often when I talk about this, where people are like, okay, but women are more often sexually abused. And that's like really, really the worst type of oppression and the worst type of war crime and all of this and blah, blah. And I also agreed. And I also thought that was true for most of my life. And I used to say it, and it is still true. I don't have any female friends that haven't been raped, sexually assaulted, molested as children or otherwise, right? I don't. Every time I get close enough to a woman and ask her, like one of those things has happened. So that used to be my evidence, right? And then I realized one day, like, I don't actually know men's experience because I never even fucking asked them. So what kind of privileged bullshit is that? Have you asked men? Have you asked the men that you're close enough to that they could trust you in telling you? And are you like not aggressive and hateful towards them, calling them toxic all the time so that they can actually trust you and tell you? Right? Have you? Because if you haven't and you're a woman and you thought this like I did, you're really fucking privileged, aren't you? You're really privileged that you never had to wonder or ask or think about it or give any sort of love or compassion to it. And this is just a random article in the Journal of American Academy of Psychiatry Law. And it's called Male Victims of Sexual Assault Phenomenology psychology, and physiology. And the abstract says myths, stereotypes, and unfounded beliefs about male sexuality, in particular male homosexuality, are widespread in legal and medical communities, as well as among agencies providing services to sexual assault victims. These include perceptions that men in non institutionalized settings are rarely sexually assaulted, that male victims are responsible for their assaults, that male sexual assault victims are less traumatized by the experience than their female counterparts, and that ejaculation is an indicator of a positive erotic experience. As a result of the prevalence of such beliefs, there's an underreporting of sexual assaults by male victims, a lack of appropriate services for male victims, and effectively no legal redress for male sexual assault victims. They have fewer resources, greater stigma, etc. And this is what I started to understand once I got past my own female privilege enough to think about it and start talking to men about it. And then I realized every man I've talked to who is close enough to me to be honest and open with me has admitted that they have been either molested or raped or sexually assaulted in some way in their life. So all the bullshit I had about like every woman, meh, I never fucking even thought every fucking man. We're actually just living a fucked up society where everybody has to defend their fucking selves against sexual assault their whole life. Like, what the fuck? It's fucking crazy. And I think it's even worse for men exactly because of what this abstract just said. People don't believe them. People think like, "Oh, but you liked it because you're a guy. Guys love sex." Like, how fucked up is that? How abusive is that? That is some female privilege bullshit. It's worse for them. It's not worse for them because it's like, because people then bring up this shit too as though it should fucking matter. But they're like, well, and the only reason you think it's worse is because it's like makes men feminized and demasculated because it's a woman's torture or punishment. Like, what did you just say? You just said their suffering doesn't matter because the only reason it sucks for them is because it's emasculating, because you think it's a woman's experience or a woman's specific suffering or torture to be raped and sexually assaulted, even though we just said the man was sexually assaulted and raped. Like, you're just making it about you? What? That is some female privilege bullshit. It's fucking crazy. And again, there's people who think I'm female bashing right now by pointing it out. But those people are probably stuck in this just like I was once. And they literally have never even fucking considered that maybe they're the fucking problem. Maybe your unquestioned biases, assumptions, and fucking bullshit is the problem. I feel so bad for men now because nobody fucking cares about their sexual assault. Nobody cares. I tell this story a lot, but I had this student who I loved so dearly, and he just a really fucking awesome kid. In his senior year, this is a crazy, I don't know how this happened. My senior year, we had senior parties, but you definitely never, the adults didn't know about it. I mean, I'm sure they all know because they had it too, but it's not like they knew when or where, like what was happening, but this, for some reason, the school I worked at, their senior party, I'm not fucking shitting you, it was in the parking lot of the school. And I was like, what? You expect to get away with that? And they're like, oh no, everybody knows. I was like, what? And I kind of get the logic. They were like, if we keep them in the parking lot of the school, we know where they are. If there's an overdose or something, like we can get them help. And I'm like, that's actually like pretty cool. It's weird that the kids are all down for it, but whatever. I'm actually okay with that. So it was very strange, but that's what happened. And none of that had anything to do with the story, but just so you know. So they had their senior party and whatever. People obviously get super trashed and drunk and stoned and high on what various things and whatever. And him and some of his friends were like talking to me after that weekend, and they were like, "Oh, Mr. Brown was like fucking rad." I'm like, "Yeah, sure it was rad, whatever." And they were like, "Yeah, da da da." And then one of them was like, "Dude, Chris got laid," and I was like, "I don't like ever need to hear about your guys' sexual experiences. It's like really not appropriate." So, I'm shutting it down like I do from time to time when they try to bring that stuff up. Boys and girls both. Unless they're just like coming for some standard dating advice or something. It's not like I'm like, don't talk to me about shit, but just you get it. So so that was my response. And then he was like, I wouldn't call it getting laid, I'd call it getting raped. And I was like, wait, because now it's like serious. Like if a student of reports any type of assault to you, you're a mandated reporter. violent situations. And so I was like, wait, are you serious? And everyone was like, oh yeah, you got raped, you can't get raped if you're a guy. I'm serious. Like, this was their response to him. And I could tell he very clearly had emotional response to this situation, that he actually felt uh, assaulted, right? Like, he was aggressed upon. So I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, if you feel like someone took advantage of you or did something to you, it's not okay. And he was like, well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really cool, I don't think. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I was like, you guys, your friend is telling you like something bad happened. It's not actually cool. Like, and they kind of were like, oh, maybe it's not cool. And I'm like, I mean, what? Like, if you want to tell me what happened, like, we can make a report. We can like get whoever this is and like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to tell you the details. And I'm like, okay, well, I at least want you to know it's not okay for people to abuse your body. It's not okay for people to force you into sexual situations, male or female, older, younger, doesn't matter. No one's allowed to do that to you. And it's not okay. I care about you, etc. Right? Is it? And the conversation went wherever it went. I don't know. And eventually I wasn't able to make a report because he didn't give me enough details that I could have done so. And I think he was also 18. I don't know anyway if school was even still going then, because I think after the senior party they had graduated and it was done and they were just coming back to say hi. I'm not really sure. So legally, just in case anyone out there wants to sue me, I don't think I was under the legal obligation to do anything. But seriously, so this is like a, cool, like, sports popular guy or whatever getting raped while he was drunk, getting taken advantage of by a girl who dragged him away to the football field where nobody would know where they were, and raped him. And I don't know if he might have like raped other people in his life or whatever. It's none of my business, but like, because those people didn't come to me, but he came to me and he had that experience. Again, look at how his friends reacted. Oh no, you liked it, like so it was awesome. Well, it's fucking not. So how many men have experienced that? That's just one random student who happened to tell me. I don't think he would have if they didn't all come in together to like brag about what a cool weekend it was or whatever, right? I don't think he would have just sought me out and been like, hey, by the way. So that's just one little insight that I had. And again, every man I've asked has had some. Sometimes some of them aren't that bad like that. They weren't full on like this rape or whatever, but it was still, again, a sexual assault. Sexual assault is sexual assault. Unwanted touching in a sexual way is sexual assault. Why would it be better for women, worse for women, better for men, or worse for men? It's just not okay. Nobody wants to be invaded. Like, and this is female privilege to imagine that for some reason it only happens to us or it's worse for us. Bitch, it's not. Bitch, it's not. And so, yeah, there's, again, so this wasn't the deepest dive into this either. Clearly, I could have actually come with more statistics, dates, whatever, but it's an overview of the ideas surrounding this, and especially those that are indoctrinated, that all of us are indoctrinated with, right? That we're meant to believe without questioning it, that most of us never have questioned. And that even when you do question it, if you're a man, like, God help you. And this is my female privilege that I even get to talk about it at all, right? God help you if you're a man, you want to point any of this out to anybody. But even as a woman, other women will be like, oh, you're a self-hating woman. Oh, you're a self-hating woman. You're woman bashing. Why are you women bashing? Oh, you want to see me woman bash? I can fucking woman bash. This is not woman bashing. I haven't even begun. I can bash some women shit for a long time. That's not what I'm doing. I'm calling out this aspect of our idea about society, about what's fair, what's right, what's equal, and what's not. What it means to be an empowered, liberated woman. And how much of it was just given to you to be unquestioning faith. You just take it on faith. This is just the truth. Women have always been the more impressed and they're horrible. And we're just now finally getting equality. Bullshit. That's bullshit. All throughout history, I genuinely believe It seems much more likely to me, and it seems like there's more evidence that most women in most cultures enjoyed their role and their place, took great pride in their craft, in their abilities, in their place in society, in the family, right? And then all of that is gone. How much have we lost from that? And then also, just like to flip the script, right? They're always like, oh, men have all the privilege, so it's up to men to protect women and lift them up in places of power and like close their legs and sit down to pee or whatever fucking shit. This is like flip it around and just go, okay, as a woman, I may have some female privilege. I may be privileged to be able to talk about these things a little bit more honestly and openly. And so I am going to point it out, or just challenge yourself to be like, fuck, have I been really fucked up towards some of the men in my life by not even fucking wondering if their societal pressure on men is just as hard, is just as fucked up, if they're just as fucking twisted up about it? This is another thing, right? Women are like, oh, why are women always like titties and out and like, man, Barbie couldn't even stand if she was real, like, and men aren't? Look at fucking superheroes. Are any of them realistic? We were just talking about Liver King earlier today on day 0. Is that fucking realistic? Like, you people thought that was natural, right? And he's just this big fucking muscle bound, like, brr, like that's not normal, but men are supposed to be like that somehow? How is that fair? There is no standard that is applied to us unfairly. Men have the equivalent in every way. Again, find one thing that is female oppression that doesn't have its equal opposite, male oppression, in our society. One thing. I'm waiting for it. This too. Well, X Cubed confirms men won't say anything about sexual assault or abuse from women or from men. And this is the misconception too, is that people think, oh, well, if men are sexually abused, it's from other men, and often when they're younger. Well, that happens. But no, actually, the men I've talked to, again, who have been willing to confide in me and talk about this openly and honestly, which isn't all of them, because they're like, I don't fucking want to talk to you about this shit, which I understand. But those that have, they've all been from women. There hasn't been a single one that was from a man. That's fucking, so no, it's not just men. But yes, I think you're right, X Cubed. And he also says, I have noticed that women will protect other women's shenanigans, even though they know it's wrong. This is something I brought up on day 0 earlier today as well. I think it was Cardi B, like bragged about drugging men and stealing their money or something. And everybody was like, yeah, girl, like female empowerment. I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, yeah, I got him, girl. You're just going to celebrate people getting drugged and robbed? And that's somehow like women's rights or like women's equality or something? And you like lie to yourself, like, men have been doing it to us forever. I mean, some men have been doing that to women. So like, wait, what? You're going to go do it to a bunch of innocent men? What the fuck? It's psycho. And you're right. A lot of women have. This is whatever. Perhaps this was not my place. But one of my female friends was cheating on one of my male friends in high school. And he asked me, do you know she's cheating on me? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, is she? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, fucking bitch, blah, blah. And then she was like, what the fuck? You're my friend. And I'm like, I mean, I'm both of your friends and you're doing something morally reprehensible in my book. Like, why? I've never understood cheating. Like, just go fuck someone else, like get a different boyfriend or whatever it is you need to do. But like, why are you cheating? I've never understood cheating. So maybe that was fucked up. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't supposed to tell him because it was not right. Maybe I just said it's not my relationship. It's none of my business. I don't. That's what a lot of people have said. But I'm more for principles than I am these like weird loyalties we're supposed to have. I'm like on the principle of it, like you're not supposed to drug people and rape them. The principle of it, you're not supposed to rob people. The principle of it, you're not supposed to cheat on people. Those are my principles. Doesn't matter to me like who they're applied to. They're applied equally. Feminism. Isn't that feminism? X Cubed, I will deep dive with you into anything any day. In the most appropriate way possible. It's like, that can be misinterpreted. I feel like I say a lot of things that could be very easily misinterpreted. Maybe you've talked about this on the show before. I'm very unaware of my possible, like, various innuendos and things. Sorry, YouTube chat, again, that I'm not intentionally ignoring you. It's just on the way my screen is, like, YouTube's way far away and it's just tiny and all crammed together. It's hard. Project Cheney in the house. Always good to see you. Yeah, I think I already addressed that, and so that was a while ago. But Cheney says, "Do you think most of the time the perpetrators of the crime are the men?" And no, not in my experience, at least. And that's one of those that essay was saying is a misperception we have. Yeah, and men have to go through circumcision. Good point, Ian. That is some fucking oppression. That shit is wild. I had someone who like wouldn't believe me that they don't use anesthetic. They don't numb it. They don't. They tie the fucking little baby's arms and hands down, or they have someone hold them down. They fucking pull the foreskin off and they cut it off, and there's no anesthetic used or applied. That's the norm, and that's been the norm. It's fucking barbaric. It's insane. So yeah, there's a reason why, in my opinion, there's a reason why men's genitals are attacked traumatically the moment they come out. And it's because the divine masculine is so awesome. I shared this video the other day on Twitter, and maybe a lot of you saw it elsewhere or there. And I don't know who this guy is, but he's on some news show or talk show of some kind, and it seems official or, mainstream in some way. And sorry, I don't know the name of it or his name, but he fucking goes off. He's like, what is this bullshit? I don't think he swears, but he's like, what is this bullshit? It was Balenciaga, and like nobody's even come and called it out. Kim Kardashian, like you fucking, they need you. You don't need them. Like you just like let them get away with it. And he goes off about Balenciaga and how we need to protect children, how no celebrities are speaking out against it, but every celebrity spoke out against Kanye. And within days, like Adidas had to drop him or else people were going to freak out, but nobody's had to drop Balenciaga for all this toddler fucking dark ass pedivore bullshit. He goes off. You can tell they're yelling at him too, and they're like, you need to tone it down, you need to stop, you need to whatever. And he pulls the earpiece off and he keeps going. And I'm like, that's some divine masculine shit. That's why they attack the masculine. That's why they promote feminine narcissism and this delusion that we are more oppressed when actually we have all this female privilege. There are specific ways women are oppressed, and there are specific ways men are oppressed. But they attack this. They attack both of us. Divine feminine's also been attacked. Obviously, clearly, that's what this whole show has been about. If we still had our divine feminine intact, we would all be healers and fucking homemakers, and like all the children would be safe, and we'd have like the best, most nutritious gardens and food. And instead, we have none of that. And the divine masculine is attacked because we don't have our protectors anymore. We have very few of them. Very few of them. And they're attacked and emasculated more and more all the time. Wellness Path for Me says, female privilege. Men make more money, women spend more money. Not doubting that. That's yeah, good point too. Cheney says women sit on a high horse of what they pretend they don't say. Female locker room talk. For real. They're like, oh, men's talk and blah, blah, blah. I worked in a people were like, I've worked in a kitchen and the way that the men talk in there is just meh. And I'm like, I mean, you went into like a male dominated area and you expected them to suddenly all change. Whatever. I've worked in kitchens for fucking years. It was awesome. Kind of a tomboy, so I like did not care. I don't care when people are like crass or make that's my type of humor. And it's not because I'm a woman hater. It's because I'm a fucking tomboy. It's because I have perhaps a more masculine sense of humor. I don't know. Tina Bina says, ever since I had sons, my view on men and women has changed. I have much more compassion for men now. I really hope my boys find awesome partners when they're older. Me too. And I hope they understand what awesome partners are and that they're not these women who are so fucking emasculating all the time. Yeah, and I also, this whole thing about like, well, boys and girls wouldn't play with like different toys if we just gave them all the same toys. And the only reason boys like trucks is because we give them trucks. And then we say things to them like, you're so strong. And then we say things to the little girls like, you're so pretty. And then we give them Barbies and like we do it all. It's all just a construct. And I'm like, fucking, no, it's fucking not. Have you raised boys? So I had only boys around me from all my family and friends all had babies around like 40. Suddenly, within a few years of each other, no one had any babies. We all, I don't know how we all just didn't have babies until 40. And then suddenly everyone had them and they all had boys. So I had like all these friends had boys. My brother had boy. My sister had a boy. Everybody had boys. And everybody said the same shit. The same shit. They were like, I didn't even try to give them like certain toys, but they were fucking obsessed with trucks. Like, if I saw a truck, they would just stop and, like, drool and, like, stare and get so excited, and they just wanted to dig in the dirt and play with trucks, and I'm like right? And I'm like, "I don't know, maybe all kids just do that, maybe it's not, like, a male thing, like, maybe that's just, like, a thing kids do." Well, then they finally started having girls, there was a few girls around, and so I asked them, like, "Are the girls also digging trucks?" Like, "No." I mean, they'll, like, play with them, they're fine, but it's not like they're not like that same, like, "I wanna fucking see a truck, I wanna ride in a truck, like, I wanna be on a fucking excavator," like, no, so, like, that's clearly something inside. Something inherently within their energy field is, like, big, loud, powerful things are rad, and the girls are like, no, those are fine. It's not my thing that I, like, need. It's cool." I actually so my nephew, he is, like, into fucking oh god, what is it? Combines. I, like, didn't even know what a combine was, and this little, like, 4-year-old is like, "Oh, yeah, like a combine, it goes through the field and, like, blows all the shit up," and, like, it's, like, explaining to me in detail what combines do. Going off about the combine, in fact, telling me so much about the combine, I'm like, "Holy shit, this kid, like, studied this as a subject." He's 4. He's just going off about combines, combine. "For Halloween, I'm gonna be a combine. I'm gonna be a combine, like, we're gonna go do combine things." Like, wow, and he finally calms down and pauses, and I look at his sister, and I'm like, "Do you also like combines?" And she's like, "No." She's 2. No, don't like combines. As much as she loves her brother and wants to be like him and, like, whatever, she was just like, "Yeah, no, I'm not into combines." So there's something to it. There's some difference in the sexes. It's just true. And Illuminati makes a good point. In the Rockfin chat, it takes strong and consistent programming to make people go against their instincts. Yeah, truly. This programming that we're all experiencing now and seeing how many of our young people are getting caught up in it is disturbing. I don't know if Balenciaga came up on the Kanye InfoWars interview. I actually haven't listened to it. I kind of want to, even though I know they're both actors and probably assets and possibly MK Ultra and all of that. I still want to know. I want to know what the psyop is. Yes. Someone says, Tina, make sure you teach your sons about narcissism. Yeah. In fact, all of us should teach all our kids about narcissism. We should all specifically teach our kids about narcissism. I probably swear, so it's probably not a great resource, but I do a couple presentations you can find around the web in different places on psychopathy, narcissism, and sociopathy. And I think they're a pretty good, concise summary of what we need to know. But yeah, you might want to check. I'm sure I swear, so it's probably not good for kids. But we want to instill in them the understanding that there are people who do not care about them and can't be made to. And that there's no point in even trying. And that once you notice, you should run away. You should know how to identify them and then run away. It's a great point. It's a great point. I love it. Tina Vina says Dr. Les Carter is one of the best channels on narcissism. I also, again, back to Josh Slocum of Disaffected podcast, talks a lot about borderline personality disorder as his main focus, but it's on the same spectrum as narcissism, sociopathy, and psychopathy. So it's very helpful. His show is amazing. He doesn't swear, although he does sometimes get a little bit saucy. He's awesome. So yeah, that's my take. Damn, again, 2 hours. I don't know, you guys. I'm every time every time I'm like, this is enough for like 40 minutes. And every time it's much longer than that. So thank you for being here tonight with me. Thank you for exploring female privilege and what we can do about it. Thank you for, especially if you have looked honestly at yourself and tried to see, do you have female privilege? If you're a man, do you have any part of you that you have repressed or suppressed so that women won't fucking attack you? Right? I'm serious. And if so, I wish you great success in addressing that for yourself and making some boundaries around it. Women don't get to treat you like shit just because society said so. And if you're a woman and you do and you are using your female privilege, it's cool. I'll fucking ask men all day to lift shit up for me. My back is fucked. I can't lift more than 20 pounds. I'll ask anybody to lift some shit for me. Like I'm not saying like don't, that type of female privilege I think is fine. But don't abuse people, right? Don't oppress people, repress people. Don't be a victim and pretend like everything is the fault of the patriarchy or the men in your life or whatever. Take responsibility for yourself. And don't use your female privilege in ways that hurts people or yourself. It does hurt you when you do this towards men as well, when you don't let them be who they are naturally. So be who you are naturally. Let them be who they are naturally. Obviously, we're always going to have the outliers, the people who are in like neither category or both or whatever, or who feel like it doesn't matter. Overall, we really need to get over this idea of the oppression being specific to women throughout history. We're all fucked here together. So we need to all help each other out of it together, rise ourselves up, and free ourselves from these fucking chains that have been on us for way too long. So let's all be a little bit more honest, a little bit more loving, compassionate towards one another. And until next time, I'll see you on Tuesday for the winning report as usual. And until then, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.